zero colleague creation around the presentation. So
You'll go first, I mean, learn to code. Learn to code if you're an archivist or librarian. You've got to learn to code. If you're decent in code, then go and spend some time looking at information. Architectures at an enterprise level, go and develop your core IT skills, because if you don't, then you're going to struggle to keep up. And it's not to say that archivists and librarians and so forth in the future are themselves going to be codes, developers and programmers, but they're going to need to manage people that are doing development code. They're going to have to write contracts. They're going to have to maintain professional relationships with people who manufacture code. And if you don't understand what they're doing, then we're going to end up in a bit of a mess, So the best thing you can, I would guess, the best thing you can do, reading, writing and coding, arithmetic doesn't really matter anymore, because you can get your coding right, and arithmetic takes care of itself. But you see what I mean, more fundamental than anything, make sure you've got a background in some of the basics of computing science, and you'll stand yourself in good stead. I mean, everything to an extent follows from that, so to know people who work in preservation and curation, you're never really going to be part of that you'll never be, but the professions that we currently understand don't really stand up much in the sense that we used to understand them. So don't expect to be an archivist, don't expect to be a librarian. The best digital preservation job I've seen advertised recently was described as a geomatics technician. Because actually, if you look closely, if someone looking for someone to do data management in the oil industry, now they would never think of calling that a librarian or an archivist. But it was all there. It was curation, it was metadata, it was format migration, it was a variety of different things for ingest processes, all those things we would expect. But the job title was geomatics engineer, just saying. That means probably flexibility. I mean, this is an observation that Laura has made to me often and comes out of the Digital work that you were also involved in, that employers are looking for flexibility, more than anything flexibility. You can come with any number of skills, but if those skills are fixed in amber, you're not going to be able to keep up. So you need to be, actually the bad news is you'll never really leave studies in that sense, that you should be expecting to have to be flexible and learn and reimagine your career as you go. You may end up working alone, okay? A lot of organisations, the digital curation or digital preservation person, frankly is the only person in the organisation that knows about that issue. And that takes me in two directions. Firstly, you're going to need to be an advocate for your own work. You're going to have to need to talk up and down in the organisation. You're going to need to talk to everyone about why it matters. And secondly, you need to develop your own network, because otherwise it's going to be quite lonely. And invest in your professional relationships with people in related organisations. But Anne is totally right. Giving advice is always a mistake. And I wouldn't pretend for a minute I followed any of that advice. So with that disclaimer, I'll hand over to Seamus.
I'm thinking you'd see Seamus' advice.
I also think you can only offer sort of meta advice. You can't offer more detail. I think that one of the William picked up the Digital work with Laura Malloy and Gao and a few others really led, and it was extremely important because it does give you a model of the kinds of knowledge sets that you need to have at different points in your career and how you need to develop throughout your career. And I think it's probably worth, if you're not familiar with it, that you take a look at it, so you can understand the sorts of questions and the sorts of knowledge domains that you're going to need to operate in. Next thing I think that's important is collaboration. That you need to learn how to collaborate. If you can't play well with others, you should probably find yourself another profession, because there is no way, even if you're a lone records manager, lone archivist, and working and you're confronted with digital materials, that you're going to be able to manage them in anything but a narrow set that you actually learned when you were here. And this is an area of dramatic change. The next thing you need to do is you need to join some professional societies. You need to get those professional societies to advocate for you for continuing education, because you are never going to be able to stop learning. You just won't survive. The field's changing, the expectations of users are changing, the kinds of challenges you're going to face are changing, and our understanding of these domains are changing. Just the whole vocabulary that I use to talk about digital preservation, digital curation, is very different now than it was 10 years ago. So I think that's going to be very important. And the most important thing for those of you who were students here this year, you probably learned is how to learn about these domains. And you think that you may think that that's not much of a skill or ability. Well, actually, in a world where we don't actually know what the questions that we're going to be having to answer in the future, how can we know what it is that we should be teaching you now? Except to give you a strong enough grounding in critical thinking that when you go out, that you will be able to learn new things. And that's not something that I say from a digital preservation point of view or digital curation perspective. That's something that any teacher or professor is going to say to you when you're coming out of a master's, maybe an undergraduate program. But being able to collaborate, know your own skill set, educating yourselves and continuing to build it, those are, and actually learning the vocabulary and understanding that other people don't use the vocabulary the same way you do. To archive means something very different to Louise and Mike, who you may or may not know here, the technical teams in school here, college. And I was going to call it faculty, but that's college. Means something very different to them than they do to those of you who completed this course and down. And being able to realize that and being able to find the right words is going to be very important in communication. That's why I go back, even models that are weak, like OIS, need to be changed and developed, are still valuable because they provide communication mechanisms.
Anybody else in the audience who would care to offer words of advice, or any students who want to ask a question about what they should